I want to tell you two slightly embarrassing stories from my trading past where kind of not paying attention to the details cost me a lot of money. Hopefully you take away an important lesson about keeping things simple and understanding and not overcomplicating your process, and maybe have a little small laugh in the process. But the first story I want to talk about, when I was trading pro, if ever you read the book Flash Boys by Michael Lewis, very good book about the intricacies of short-term trading in the markets. Well, we were putting on a lot of the different kind of trades that he talks about in that book. And one of the very popular strategies was, trading for credits from the exchange. I'm not going to go into all of the details of it, but just quite simply, if you put a bid in the market and someone hits your bid, you get rewarded by the exchange for about a quarter of a cent per share. Likewise, if you do the opposite, if there's a bid and you hit that bid to get out of your position, you have to pay the exchange about a quarter cent per share. Now, most retail investors don't realize this is going on, and it's probably already factored into your commission price, so you never even see this. But for professionals with direct kind of market access, this is a big part of your cost structure, or even a way to make money. So now on 10,000 shares, it's about $25. It's not a incredible amount of money, but I remember it was something that we would pay attention to. But I think it was an options expiry day, if I remember correctly. I think it was 2010 or 2011. And Canada's most active ETF, the XIU, was having kind of a busy session. And so I noticed it was kind of trading over and over at the same price. And with this strategy, you basically want to buy and sell at the same price, but collect this commission. So I started with 10,000 shares, and I'd make that $25, get out, make $25, $50, not a big deal. Doing this, 3 times, 5 times, 6 times, I started to realize, hey, there's some kind of abnormal activity. So I started to, of course, as any trader, start to raise the stakes. Instead of 10,000 shares, doing 50,000 shares, 100,000 shares at a time, back and forth. Now, 100,000 shares at a time, it's about $250 each way in and out. I mean, do that quickly and it adds up. There's a whole trading day. This is taking place over the course of seconds. And so I remember doing this, and I had my buddy Franco sitting next to me, and we talk all day, all the time. I've spoken about him in some of the past videos. And I remember him saying, Matt, what are you doing? You look super zoned in. Usually, you're on the desk, you're laughing, you're telling jokes. And I remember this day being zoned in because I was literally just kind of printing this money back and forth and back and forth. Read up on the So's Bandits if you get a chance. You'll get a sense of what this is about. Much harder now today with HFTs and algos. It doesn't work the same kind of way. But long story short, at the end of the day, this was easily a 5-figure day for me, just simply by buying and selling at the exact same price, doing this all day long. Now I'm feeling great. You're talking a guy in his early 20s making that kind of money. It's a good trading day. And of course, all this will get reconciled at the end of the month. You get your statements, your P&L statements. So I remember going to look at what I was going to receive from this day, and I see none of the profit is there. So right away, I figure this is some kind of mistake. I get up to go see our colleague who takes care of the numbers and say, hey, what's going on? I'm missing a big chunk of money here. And they're like, oh yeah, you didn't realize those active and passive credits from the exchange don't apply to ETFs. They only apply to common shares. I say, whoa, what are you talking about here? The program, our in-house software was showing me that this profit was building. She's like, yeah, we need to fix that. It inaccurately applies it also to ETFs, but it's only for common stock. And so I start to get upset, and she's like, hey, look, this comes from the exchange. We can't pay you out on something that you never actually earned. And so there's only so much you can do. You can't really yell and throw anything around the office. But to make things worse is, while I was trying to kind of make this active and passive credit, I actually was taking some small losses. I mean, who cares if you're losing a few $1,000s if you're making all of this other money, buying and selling at the same price, but all that other money wasn't there. So what I thought was a phenomenal day, because I didn't read the fine print about what stocks this is being paid out on or not being paid out onto, what looked like an amazing day, probably one of my best, better days trading up until that point, ended up being an actual loss. So you need to read the fine print before you apply any kind of strategy. You need to know your order types. You need to know how you get filled. I mean, every broker will explain all this stuff. It's worth taking the time as you're, sending shares in, maybe through an algo or a limit order or a stop order. Understand the technicalities of how your strategy works. If it's too complicated to understand, you probably shouldn't be using it, because if you are, at some point, these technicalities will probably come to bite you. Another probably even maybe more embarrassing story was, it was I think 2011 again, in that kind of period. again, when you're actively trading, you're doing so much. Sometimes you don't think through everything as thoroughly as you should. But I was doing a lot of day trading, but I was also trying to do some position trading, and markets were getting choppier in 2011. So I remember reading somewhere on the internet, some blog somewhere about, hey, instead of worrying about getting in and out of these stocks, if you have a good favorable long-term view, just buy some leaps, these option leaps, where basically it's a long-term option and your risk is defined and you have all of this great upside. And I said, you know what? I'm so busy day trading and position trading. Sorry, I'm so busy day trading. I want to position trade, but I don't have the same kind of time and effort to devote because I'm so busy day trading. So I bought a bunch of leaps on Fossil, FOSL, which if you look back was a really great mover in 2009, 2010, 2011. They were making all these belts and accessories, which were really popular at the time. And so I remember buying these leaps. And of course, look, whenever you change your strategy for some kind of easy way, it's always a market top. It's always the same thing over and over again. There's no easy way in the market. Long story short, I didn't take the time to figure out the implied volatility, how fast this option would decay, what would happen if, stocks came down just a little bit or chopped sideways. I mean, I knew options, took all the courses, I've traded options, just wasn't a big focus of mine. And it's not that I didn't understand the risks of the options. I didn't really fully internalize how quick the pricing could change and to what degree. So sometimes it's kind of, not that you're unaware, but you're going in, not fully prepared. And that's really what I did with this strategy. So it wasn't a monumental disaster, just like the other example was not a monumental disaster. But soon after, Fossil had a bad earnings report, kind of gapped down. I just remember seeing my leaps being obliterated. And it was just like, I bought these things to, to kind of sidestep this market frustration from these positions, which I thought could do well. And this thing still just kind of basically went to zero, and those leaps became worthless ultimately. Again, the point there is kind of keep the strategy simple, trying to kind of make things more complex, bringing in derivatives like options and all these different types of other instruments. I mean, they can work fine if they're part of your strategy. You can be as complex as you want, but you need to really understand why you're using a certain tool, a certain technique, how it can work in your favor or how it can't, and you need to know the details. So I hope you enjoyed these two stories. Everyone loves to talk about all the great moves they make. Well, trade long enough, you'll have some of these funny and expensive stories to tell yourself. So I hope you enjoyed them. If you have any kind of funny stories where a little kind of technical glitch, let's call it, cost you a bunch of money, put them in the comments below. It's sometimes fun to laugh a little bit at our past mistakes, as long as we don't keep repeating them. We'll be back with a new video. Talk soon.